Good evening everyone, I'm Moonspirit and welcome back to the Moonspirit Experience. Not only do I love video games, I also love movies as well. And one of my favorite movies of all time has got to be The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. Both movies really captivated me because of the story and characters and set my standards on what makes a perfect film to me. Plus, it gave me such an emotional response too. People tend to think of the likes of The Goodfellas, The Sopranos, and Scarface, which I'm not a fan of Scarface, but I'm not here to talk about my taste in movies because that's not what you're here for. I'm here to talk to you about a game that pays homage to the gangster genre really well, and that game is Mafia II. Developed by 2K Games, Mafia II is the sequel to Mafia: The City of Lost Heaven, a moderately successful and realistic take on the GTA formula back in the early 2000s. I played a bit of it before and it was pretty nice, but shouldn't I be talking about the first game instead of the second? Well, luckily, you don't need any prior knowledge of the first game to play the sequel, though this game does close out that story very briefly. But hey, forget about it! Let's put on a nice tailored suits and meet the family. This is Mafia II. Vito Scarletta is an Italian immigrant from Sicily who tries to make ends meet in the city of Empire Bay with his best friend, Joe Barbaro, by turning to a life of crime, all because of his family's poor lifestyle. Vito gets busted during a foiled robbery but avoids jail time by being drafted into Italy for World War II. After fighting some time in the war, Vito gets sent back to Empire Bay due to an injury, but luckily, Joe gets him discharged with the help of his, connections. And now Vito is given back his freedom, there's only one way for him to chase his American dream, by stealing his way to the top, and to do that, he has to join the Mafia. Along the way, he'll meet some friends and some troublemakers, but with Joe by his side, it should be a cakewalk. The plot's timeline spans throughout the 1940s to the 1950s, from helping the Mafia to being sent to jail to eventually becoming a made man. The game really showcases how fast the time changes, as well as cultures and society, from listening to Bing Crosby to tequila, and seeing mobsters to greasers. It's the fine touches like this that make this game exquisite. Mafia 2 lets you do what GTA does: steal cars, kill people, get new cars on the tires, etc. But the difference is that the game doesn't let you choose what mission to do when you feel like it. The game is divided into chapters, meaning when one chapter ends, you start the next one anew. And that's what you'll do: follow the objectives until the chapter closes. However, you are able to go off the beaten path, but doing so kinda makes the true objectives stick out like a sore thumb. There are only two ways to fight in this game. You can do the occasional boxing, which is nice, but come on, you can't spell Mafia without pistols and Tommy guns. There was criticism for the lack of melee weapons, which I never noticed, but then again, you can't really spell Mafia beatdown without baseball bats and ice picks. When you do explore the city, there are several collectibles to find in every nook and cranny. There are over 100 wonder posters to find that feature the old mugshots of criminals, but the ones to really look out for are the Playboy pinup girls, and when you collect them, you're free to oogle at those wholesome honeys. Even with all the restrictions this game gives you, the city of Empire Bay feels alive, and it's all thanks to the scripts, the orchestral score, and most importantly, the immersion. For example, when Vito returns to Empire Bay, Joe drives him to get drinks while the two make conversation. This moment lets you soak in the city's winter season while getting a good look at the city. There are a lot of times where there'll be conversations while driving, and I love to listen to everyone banter because they actually feel like real characters and not just NPCs. There's also a couple you'll come across where their car broke down and they are arguing with each other to the point where the husband leaves in a fit while leaving his wife behind. Now, while this is happening, you have the option to just walk away, but come on, be a gentleman and help the poor lady out. Vito later on has to steal gas stands from a federal building, and while you sneak around, you'll hear a lovely conversation with a couple of guards talking about television's future and then foreshadowing the idea of video games. It's a pretty fun listen when you have the time. However, the radio does some interesting things other than just do news stories or play music of their decades. The DJs will make some announcements about some of the game's events that you're involved in. For instance, say you blew up a hotel, and after that, the radio stations will report the news about it.
A lot of calls about that insane new sound called rock and roll. And there's more of it to come with... Oh, hey, hang on a second, guys and dolls. I've just been handed an important, urgent breaking news story. Okay, listen, kids. Reports are flooding the Empire Central Radio newsroom of gunshots and explosions in Midtown. Now, there are plumes of smoke that can be seen rising from the Empire Arms Hotel.
It's these types of moments that show how immersive this game could truly be, and I wish games would do more things like this. I couldn't help but be reminded of the movies that influenced this game, like the Goodfellas. You see, Vito reminds you of Henry Hill since he was brought up into crime at a young age, but I do see a bit of Michael Corleone from The Godfather in Vito's character because of his military background. Joe Barbaro reminds me of Tommy DeVito from The Goodfellas as well, but he's a big wisecrack and seems to have his way with the ladies, and he doesn't have a short fuse. But there are times in the game when Vito and his crew shake down together, and in those moments, I get the Sopranos vibes here. Let me show you.
Said I'd be the chosen one in a million. I believe I'm gonna burn to shine.
But that's not the only movie this game drew inspiration from. When Vito gets sent to jail, the prison itself looks inspired by the Shawshank Redemption. Seriously, from the intro to the jail outfits to some of its set designs, the resemblance is practically uncanny. With this in mind, I'm expecting Morgan Freeman to narrate the cutscenes. That would have been spectacular. You'd think the Mafia life has been good to Vito. Well sure, he's got money, fancy cars and suits, and a beautiful home. But his dream home got burnt down by Irish gangsters, along with everything he had. Not to mention that he and Joe unintentionally incited a war between the Mafia and the Chinese triads after they attacked them on their turf. All because their friend literally got axed off by them. But here's the real kicker. All fingers are pointed to both of them, and the family's getting wise to their act. That's mob life for you. Sure, you get the money and freedom, but somebody's gotta pay the price. Vito receives a call from one of his boss's men and tells him to meet up, most likely to whack him off. Before getting there, Vito is picked up by a mafioso he met in jail named Leo Galante, and he's not too happy with what they did. Because of the two of them, the FBI is hot on both the Mafia and the Triad's asses, so Leo gives Vito an ultimatum: kill his boss Falcone or die, an offer he shouldn't refuse, which he didn't. Vito finally comes face to face with Falcone, but Joe also appears and it seems he's taking Falcone's side. Psych! Joe turns back to Vito's side and aids him, where Vito emerges victorious as he guns down Falcone. They both emerge from the observatory, and Leo and his crew are waiting for them, and they are ready to celebrate. As their rides drive on, Joe's car turns at an intersection, whereas Leo tells Vito that Joe wasn't part of the deal. That's right, Joe is most likely being sent to his death, and all Vito could do is sit idly by as he loses his best friend, as the game ends on a somber view of the city. After finishing the game on hard mode, which was no small feat for me, I felt the game ended too soon as there could have been a lot more story to be told. Unfortunately, you don't get to freely explore the city as you wish when the game ends, which is an absolute no-no for an open world sandbox game. You are rewarded with several posters and pinups that make the game look like it was advertised from the 1950s, which is nice. As for the collectibles, I'm not willing to look for all the wanted posters, but those Playboy pinups on the other hand. There is DLC that extends the longevity of this game. Unfortunately, all of it is in the extended PS3 edition, and I only have the 360 version, which only has 2. But don't cry over it because you're not really missing much. The first DLC is Jimmy's Vendetta, where you play Jimmy, a cleaner for the Mafia who is out for revenge against those who betrayed him. This has the free roaming option the game needed, but overall, it's kinda boring. The missions mostly consist of either killing people or steal a car. It all comes down to a score attack structure for online leaderboards. And truth be told, the missions didn't give me much incentive to care. The second is Joe's Adventures, which actually follows the main story, sort of. It takes place during Vito's time in jail, but the structure of the DLC is just like Jimmy's Vendetta, only except the missions are actually a lot more varied. But just like the previous DLC, I don't care that much about the missions. Bottom line, don't get the DLC, they aren't worth your time or money. To conclude, this game is an offer to consider. The writing and story of this game pays homage to the gangster genre really well, but the game really could have benefited with a free roam option like all the other sandbox games. While the game mostly boasts a linear experience, you can still explore if you ignore most of the objectives. Overall, the game is worth checking out, but for me, it's mostly worth a rental at least. This may not be the GTA game you're looking for, but it's definitely one to try out and see for yourself. Well, here's the Mafia 3, everybody. Let's hope this game will be awesome. Until then, I'm Moonspirit saying good night, and I leave you with this.
It's only my favorite song, Scott.
My dear